and welcome to Horror Boys. It's a podcast on the internet. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris.
And we are the Horror Boys. And this isn't any old podcast on this old internet. No, my friends. This is a horror movie review podcast where every week we review a horror movie. I know, crazy, right? Typically, we record a whole franchise at once. Like, not at once. We don't, like... But we record a whole franchise back to back. It comes out, like, weekly, like, a franchise. We've done Scream. We've done Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm probably missing one. Hatchet, I think, is another franchise. I think that's the only franchises we've done. Sounds right, maybe. I might be missing something, but it's fine. It's okay. It's not the important part of this. It's not... That point is we normally do that. But today, we're not doing that. We are doing a one-off episode that is part of a franchise. It's confusing. It's due to time. It's happening. This episode, as you noticed when you saw this come out, it's Halloween. Today is literally Halloween. So... Today we're gonna be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas. No. We're talking about John Carpenter's Halloween. So let's jump into this little information before we get into the actual part of it, you know? Because we got obviously he'd be involved considering his name is over it because, you know, he's John Carpenter. He's our director, our composer, and our co-writer in John Carpenter. We also have our co-writer, Deborah Hill, who I believe at the time was, like, dating John Carpenter. Because this whole, thing was, like, a family affair of, like, every other person is connected to someone on the staff and stuff.
Interesting. And
then we also have our director of photography, who is Dean Cundy, who is also, I guess, probably would have been after this, went on to do all three of the Back to the Future movies, as well as Jurassic Park. So, the man's got a little bit of a pedigree in his own right when it comes to just cinematography. And then, we have a couple more things that we're going to jump into before we even get into the movie. I know, crazy, right? And we're going to talk about some of our executive producers. We don't normally do that, because those people who just don't put money into it, and for the most part. But we will talk about Mustafa Akkad, because he is one of the only people who was involved in the early days. Once John Carpenter leaves, he's still around, so I want to mention him here because he helped make sure it stayed on whatever weird vision they wanted to go for later. But and then we also have an executive producer in Irwin Yablans. And he's important because Halloween was basically his idea. He had the idea. He was a movie distributor who knew John Carpenter because he helped distribute John Carpenter's previous movie before this, Assault on Precinct. I can't Precinct. Thank you. 13. Yep. Yeah, he did that. He helped him distribute that movie. So he was like, I have this idea for a movie. I want to make a movie about babysitters being stalked, and I want to set it on Halloween and call it Halloween. And then he's like, hey, John Carpenter, I want you to do this. All right. And now, basically, after that, it was all Deborah Hill and John Carpenter. They wrote it, and they fleshed out more than a sentence of an idea there. But Irwin Yablans is a very important man in this movie existing. So thought I'd mention those two names here before we jump into the movie itself.
Woo! Movie itself.
Yeah. We open with the iconic Halloween theme playing over our credits. I'll bring it up here because I could bring it up literally every scene. But John Carpenter's score for this movie is probably the best score in cinema history. This is so amazing. Constantly, the whole time. It's perfect. I love it. It elevates the movie to what it is. So, it is all the credit in the world to John Carpenter, who did this theme in 3 days. He did all of the composing in 3 days after they filmed the movie. All on his own. Just composed this masterpiece in 3 days. Yeah.
Love the score.
It is amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so we open with the iconic theme playing over our credits. And while the credits are going, we also have it slowly zooming in on a jack-o'-lantern into its eye and nose, which kind of resemble like the Michael Myers' face and a knife. Like the nose kind of looks like a knife. I've always heard that, and I can definitely see it. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it looks like it was. Because the nose has like a weird little like cut by like its side, so it looks more like a knife. Yeah. So it's like, oh, maybe this was I don't know. But it's there, and that's the credits. The credits are awesome because this movie's great. Spoiler, I love this movie. I'm gonna just be like geeking out over this movie as we talk about it because it's art. We head to Haddonfield, Illinois. Real quick about Haddonfield. Haddonfield is not a real place, but it is named after Deborah Hill's hometown of Haddonfield, New Jersey. So there is a Haddonfield, but not a Haddonfield, Illinois. So yeah, we're heading to Haddonfield, Illinois on Halloween night, 1963. We then have a beautifully shot and scored POV scene. It is, once again, just amazing. This was kind of revolutionary at the time, too, because they were using, what's the word? It's like a, I wish I would have wrote it down because I don't remember. It's the name of the camera was the Panaglide, but it's like, the camera's like you wear on you. And this was like one of the first times that had ever been used. I can't remember the name of that type of camera. I feel bad. But yeah, this was one of the first times that had been used because it was a relatively new technology, and it made them be able to like do this on the very small budget they had for this movie. But yeah, this POV scene is amazing. I can't do it credit. I will go through some of the stuff that happens during it because there is like important things that happen, but this scene is it's great. We watch as so we're in like the POV of someone. We don't know who yet. As we watch as they stalk the outside of a house. They look in on Judith, who is played by Sandy Johnson, who, I'll be honest, didn't do much else. For the most part, she did some stuff, but mostly she was in like exploitation comedies, a bunch of like rated R comedies where she probably, spoiler alert, like she does in this movie, got her boobs out. Like that was probably what she was doing. I haven't seen any of those movies, but just due to the fact that she did it in this movie and that was the only kind of movies she was in were exploitation comedies, it's probably what she did.
Whoops.
But she's in this movie, so I will give her credit. She also has a boyfriend who did like literally nothing else, so I didn't write down his actor's name. I'm sorry. And they're making out before going upstairs. We then watch as the soon-to-be killer goes in through the back door and grabs a kitchen knife. Yep. And this fun fact about the hand that grabs the knife in this scene, it is played by Deborah Hill. So like whenever you see the hand like in this scene, it's Deborah Hill because, I guess not a spoiler because you've all seen Halloween if you're watching this, they couldn't actually have a kid do this long of like a scene because it's like really hard to get kids in movies. There's a lot of rules, and this is like an all-night shoot. Then they are not seen as the boyfriend leaves. The boyfriend leaves, which, really quickly, a little awkward. Guess he didn't perform very well.
Yeah. Because in the time it takes them to go upstairs and for, Michael to get inside.
About a minute. It's about a minute maybe.
Yeah,
and
a minute.
Coming
he's
back
like,
down,
right,
putting his shirt back on. See you later. It's like, oh, all right. I guess, okay.
30 seconds is all he needs.
Apparently.
Speed harmonica player.
Yeah. But yeah, they do not see Michael, or, oops, sorry, spoiler.
Oh yeah. Whoops.
I know. And the boyfriend leaves, and then Michael, because I already said it, goes upstairs and he puts on the boyfriend's clown mask. Fun local thing about how like the POV gets like narrowed, like it's now coming through the eyes of the mask. Just really love that touch.
Yeah.
Also,
really, really cool.
This is also thanks to them putting on the mask. They're able to actually like hide one of their cuts in this because they wanted to shoot this all in like one take, but like the camera, because it was really like early on in technology, could only shoot like 4.5 minutes on its film. So, and this seems like 7 minutes, so they had to like hide a couple cuts, and this is one of the places they hit it as they're sliding the mask over, because it goes to all black as the mask is going on. They then look in at a now topless Judith before killing her with the knife. The killer goes outside as Judith's parents come up and take off his mask, revealing a 6-year-old Michael Myers.
Yeah. I would like to, make a real quick comment.
Okay.
That, this entire sequence is really cool, but just, logistically, there is a scene where, he's stabbing, and as he stabs, he looks up at the knife and, keeps stabbing, and I was like, it's cool that we get to see the knife with, the blood on it, but also, I feel like a child, who's in that act is probably going to be very fixated on what they are doing and, not disassociating off into space. Is they?
Oh, no. I don't know if I agree. I think there might be a chance of disassociation here with the way we see them react as the mask comes off. As they
up at the knife.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, but also, I don't know if I agree. I feel like you could definitely explain that in
That's a minor nitpick, but
I feel like I don't agree. I don't agree. It's a good nitpick. I think that he could. He's appreciating the blood on the knife. He likes the way it looks. I don't know, but yeah. So and this is also where we find out. Yeah, it's Michael Myers, who is named after the UK distributor of Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh.
So that was a little nod they had to the guy who helped that movie get big, because it wasn't getting any pickup in in the States, but this guy Michael Myers helped it be in the UK, put it in the London Film Festival, and they won, so yeah.
So to honor him, we named him named a serial killer.
Yeah, and then yeah, it's a little weird, but it's also paying homage. Yeah, that's fair. Excuse me, sorry. But yeah, so once again, this whole sequence though is amazing. It is. Cool. This movie is amazing. I'm gonna say that way too many times. This is if you don't like Halloween somehow and you found this podcast, this is not gonna be the podcast for you, because I am not going. No. I'll point out minor flaws I see here and there, but I am not gonna be mean to this movie overall. So if you wanted something like that, this isn't gonna be it. Spoiler.
Sorry.
Yeah. We are now in Smith Grove, Illinois, on October 30th, 1978. We're in a car with Dr. Sam Loomis, who is played by Donald Pleasance, who was... He's a prolific actor at this point. He'd already been in tons of stuff, since the 50s. I'd say one of his biggest roles he had done before this was he was Blofeld in You Only Live Twice, which is, a James Bond movie. People love James Bond, so I feel like that's a big thing. But yeah. Also, his name was a nod to, I believe, the protagonist of Psycho. I believe he's the protagonist, but I know it's definitely a character in Psycho. There's a character named Sam Loomis as well. Yeah. Also in the car is Nurse Marion Chambers, played by Nancy Stevens, who, I'll be honest, hasn't done a lot besides reprising this role in every different iteration of the timeline, pretty much. That's been one of her biggest things. She's probably also done other things, but that was the things that were sticking out to me. I was oh, she was in H2O. Oh, she was in Halloween Kills. Okay, she's just in all the time. They keep rebooting her characters coming back, so... Yeah, no, that's fair.
Whoops.
Yeah. But yeah, she's here. And they are discussing the transfer of Dr. Loomis's patient. It's Michael. They don't say it at all in the scene though, but it's definitely Michael who they're talking about. Mm-hmm. Loomis says that the patient hasn't spoken in 15 years, and then tells Marion not to underestimate it. She finds that choice of words strange, but he's pretty much no, he's an it, and he should never get out. We also find out that Loomis has... I already said that without realizing it was in my notes. All right. They then arrive at the asylum. They find that all the patients are out and about on the grounds. They're not inside. That's not where...
They're grass-fed.
They're free range.
Free range, organic. Mental patients.
Yeah, They drive all the way up to the main gate. Loomis gets out to check things out and go open like a gate because they're trying to get inside. A patient hops on top of the car. We don't see who they are yet. Spoiler, it is also Michael. This is Michael, and he attacks Marion. First by when he gets on top, like Marion looks out the window, he grabs her, chokes her for a little bit. She's able to get away. She's on the other window, and he smashes it with his arm, and she spooks her out of the car. Fun mistake that's caught in it, which I found out by watching the Movies That Made Us on Netflix. You can actually see how they broke the window because Michael has a wrench in his hand that's not supposed to be there, but it's just clearly still in the shot because they needed a way to break this window.
That's fair.
Yeah. He after that he spooks her out of the car, so she runs out and he steals her car because Michael can drive. It's a thing that's kind of consistent throughout the franchise and is really the most explanation we get is one line later in this movie of someone must have taught him. And it's okay. Sure. But yeah, Michael can drive, so he drives off. He's the only one of those killers who drives. Take that, Jason. Michael knows how to drive.
Yeah.
And Loomis ends the scene with talking about how the evil has gotten away. We then head back to Haddonfield, and it's now Halloween. We meet Laurie Strode, who is played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who at the time was an actress who had done some TV work, but has gone on to be a huge mainstream actress. She is one of the biggest success stories from someone who started out in horror.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen any of her other movies, you might have seen her in the Activia commercials.
Yes, that is true. She was early on in her career. She became kind of a scream queen after this movie because she was also in Halloween 2, The Fog, Terror Train, and Prom Night. Those were all those all came out between 78 and 81. Yeah. Prom Night, The Fog, and Terror Train were all 1980. She did nothing in 1979 when it came to horror that I saw. And then in 1981, she did Halloween 2. And then she pretty much said, I'm done with horror until, H2O called and then Halloween 2018 called. She's also, was in Freaky Friday. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Christmas with the Cranks. They're huge movies she was in. I mean, she also did, other things. But those are the movies I know her from as, late millennial, early Gen Z kid who, grew up in the 2000s. I saw her in Christmas with the Cranks and Freaky Friday. That's who I think of when I think of Jamie Lee Curtis. Also, fun fact about Jamie Lee Curtis is she is the daughter of Tony Curtis, who was an actor, as well as daughter of an actress named Janet Leigh, who was in Psycho. Another connection to Psycho. Her mother was the, girl killed in the shower in Psycho, spoiler, if you haven't seen Psycho. But, the most iconic scene in Psycho, that's her mom dying. So...
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So she's kind of horror royalty, almost, by just coming into this. So, yeah. Let me move on now to, what actually happens in the scene. That's who... We've talked about Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie. Now we'll move on to what she does. Yeah. As she leaves her house, Laurie's father tells her to put the key under the mat at the Myers house because he is selling the house.
Yeah, because he is a realtor.
Yeah, he's trying to. And now we'll never see him again, so don't worry about her father. On her way, she runs into a kid she babysits, Tommy Doyle, who is played by Brian Andrews. The character of Tommy Doyle... It later gets to be played by lots of much more famous people than this kid. But, this time it's just this kid. But, both Paul Rudd and Michael C. Hall both play this same character at different points in this franchise. So yeah. Which we'll get in more of those movies next year when we cover the franchise. And he tells her not to go up to the Myers house because Lonnie said it's haunted. Laurie's like, yeah, it's not. You're a crazy, silly kid. So she drops the key off at the door, while us, the audience, some fun dramatic irony, get to see that someone is in the house. Oh my. As Laurie walks away, we have a shot over the Shape's shoulder. I will refer to him mostly as the Shape, because that's what he's referred to in this movie. It's Michael, but, like, I kind of switch back and forth. Like, I feel like, I don't know what, my brain was, because initially they thought of him as more of the Shape, because it's more like a entity, because Michael was more like the kid who, I don't know. I'm going to probably switch back and forth with what I call him in the notes, but in the credits, he's called the Shape, not Michael Myers, so fight John Carpenter, not me. But don't, because he's a treasure, and he's really old, and you probably heard him, so please don't do that. But yeah, the Shape is played by Nick Castle, who, fun fact about Nick Castle getting this role, is that he went to school with USC, I believe is the name of the school. He went there with both John Carpenter as well as the production designer Tommy Lee Wallace. I think they had a band together too, but so he was just kind of like a friend of him who wasn't supposed to be in the movie, and we just kind of like found out they were filming really close to where he lived, so he just kind of contacted John Carpenter. Was like, "Hey, can I come hang out while you shoot? I want to be a director someday. I'm gonna make my own movies, but maybe I can see how it's done." And John Carpenter's like, "Yeah, sure. Well, while you're here, might as well throw the costume on and be the Shape, be the killer for us." And he's like, "All right, cool." Other fun little story that I don't know where exactly else I would have brought it up, but he also famously asked John Carpenter what his motivation was, because he was getting that kind of the actor mode of what's my motivation, and John Carpenter just told him, and just walk. Just stand there. And which adds to the emotionlessness that is Michael. John Carpenter knew what he was doing, but I'm sure in the moment Nick Castle was like, what are you talking about? Just stand there? Okay.
Menacingly.
Yeah. Also here is where we'll bring up the fun fact that probably everyone and their mother knows, and that's about the mask. This mask initially was a William Shatner as Captain Kirk mask that was customized by production designer Tommy Lee Wallace. So yeah, they just
William Shatner's face is just naturally horrifying. There you go.
I mean, to be fair, it's also the style of rubber mask that is very almost nothing, no features on it. And they did small things, they removed the eyebrows, made the eye holes a little bigger, and cut off the sideburns before also painting it. But yeah, so it's actually William Shatner is Michael Myers.
He is the Shape.
Yeah, he is the Shape. We then have a quick scene of Dr. Loomis yelling at and blaming Dr. Wynn, who is played by Robert Phelan, for Michael's escape. That's about it. This is also the scene where we have someone here must have taught him how to drive. Yeah. It's this scene is so just there. Which I will say, this movie is a movie that for the most part I would argue all the scenes add a lot to it. Even the smaller nothing scenes, you could argue, add a lot of character development. I feel like this scene is just here. It's one of the few scenes that I feel like doesn't really serve that big of a purpose, other than, I guess, explaining Michael's ability to drive.
Yeah. Or at least acknowledging that he shouldn't have the knowledge to drive, and then going,
I guess you could also argue it adds to what we'll see later of just the unhingedness that is Dr. Loomis. It's starting to add to him and his being the character that has the fear of what's to come, because he knows. So yeah. We then head to Laurie in class, looking out the window as the Shape looks back at her. She gets called to answer a question about fate. When she looks back, he's gone.
Just the car?
Yeah, no, the car's gone too. He drove the car away. That was his car.
Well,
no, the car's gone.
No, she looks back because there's the shape, and then she looks back, and then it's the car, and then she looks away, and then she looks back, and then the car's gone.
I could be wrong, but I swear he was there the whole time until he drives the car away. But once again, it doesn't really matter. The point is, he's gone now when she looks back, including the car, so he drove away, because I guess, whatever. He's there. It's, once again, it's, I could try, like, it's amazing. The scene is awesome. Like, I can't really explain it. Like, this is such a movie where it's like, on paper, as I read off a lot of this stuff, you're going to be like, yeah, this just sounds like every other horror movie ever. Yeah, sure. But one, this did it before most of them, and just did it better. The execution is what makes Halloween such a great movie, is everything is done so well. So, like, this scene's awesome. The music is also great in it, because, of course, it is.
The movie lets the score and, like, the cinematography do a lot of the scaring.
Yeah, I agree.
Instead of, like, doing big audio cue.
Yeah, no, there's like nothing when it comes to like jump scares, really, which is great.
Just the being that is Michael Myers.
Yeah. We then head to after school, where Lonnie and his friends are bullying Tommy by breaking his pumpkin and telling him that the boogeyman is coming.
Yeah.
One of Lonnie's friends, Richie, after they run off after being mean to him, runs right into like Michael's arms, but Michael kind of just pushes him away. Michael doesn't seem to want to hurt children, which, you know, at least he's got morals, I guess.
Michael just goes, "Stop running."
Yeah, so what are you doing? Yeah, you gotta hurt someone.
And only I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah. Michael then does watch and kind of follow Tommy for a little bit, and he's in Marian's car. He like starts to drive a little bit and follow him up the road a little bit, but then just kind of goes past him. I guess he decides, I don't want to. I'm not gonna hurt Tommy either. Whatever. Moving on. We head to Loomis, who is stopped at a payphone, warning the Haddonfield police of Michael's escape and how he's coming and how they need to be afraid. Before he discovers an abandoned truck of Michael's, as well as Michael's like clothes from the asylum, and also finds Marian's matches that we saw. There was like a shot of it in the opening scene with the first Loomis scene, the scene in the rain, the escape scene. You see it. There is a shot of it there to establish it being here later. But he doesn't find the dead Mr. Phelps, who Michael stole his iconic jumpsuit from. I brought up the name Mr. Phelps just because that's my name. I'm Mr. Phelps. That's my truck he stole. I'm the dead guy.
Not true at all.
What? Oh, okay. We come back to Lori as we see her and her friend Linda, who is played by PJ Souls, who was also in Carrie. I believe they actually saw her in Carrie and cast her in this because they wanted her for this role after that. Yeah, so she's here. She says totally a lot. I didn't notice it while I was watching the movie, but every video I heard about it, that was the one thing everyone kept bringing up. Even like the documentaries, like she brought up, like, oh yeah, every other one of my lines was totally. So apparently she opens and closes most of her lines with totally. She's a very Valley girl in that kind of sense.
Totally, yeah.
Apparently everyone else really noticed that as a thing she did all the time. I didn't. It didn't even cross my mind that she was saying it the whole time, but she was. They start to walk home when their friend Annie, played by, at the time, her name I believe is Nancy Kyes. She was credited in the movie as Nancy Loomis. I don't know I don't know, but she was also in. The reason she got this role was because she was in Assault on Precinct 13, as well as also later goes on to be in John Carpenter's The Fog. So, and I believe she's also at the time was married to Tommy Lee Wallace, the production designer who designed The Mask. Once again, this whole movie is like a family affair of people connected. There's a bunch of other like smaller like behind the scenes tech roles and stuff that I don't bring up because I can't bring up every person who works on a movie who were like related to this person and that person, and it is like, or like they went to school together, and it's like, well, okay. This was a bunch of friends and family like getting together and just making a movie basically.
Nice.
Yeah. Michael drives by them, I guess, kind of fast, because Annie yells at him that speed kills, and he slams on his brakes before just driving off. We then find out that Linda and her boyfriend plan to play harmonica tonight. Ooh, while Annie is babysitting. Annie's then really mean to Laurie. Like, if I remember right, the scene is the way this is one of the many times I will say Annie is one of like my least favorite characters in the scene.
Same.
She's so mean.
She's so insufferable.
Yeah, she's so mean to Laurie. Like, I believe this scene was her basically, like, because Laurie's like, oh, you're babysitting at that house? We could maybe, like, call and talk together. And she's like, oh, great. My choices are to watch the kid, hear them screwing around, or talk to you. It's like, you're supposed to be friends, and you're like, oh, I have to talk to you. It's like, gosh. And this is only the first scene where she says stuff like that, where I go, what the heck? Why is anyone friends with you?
You do think about that kind of stuff, Laurie. Yeah, she sucks.
She's
I
so
hate
mean.
Annie.
I do not like Annie. Lost my place. Because, of course, it's a podcast. Have to do that.
Michael drives off after
That
Annie
was before.
yells
That
at her.
was before. It was before this whole scene with the... and then we get then Annie... the girls drop Linda off at her house, and we get the classic Michael bush shot with him like standing at the bush and then walking into it, like walking
And
behind
then
it.
Michael's gone behind the bush. Oh, he's so fast.
Yeah, because Annie went up to investigate it, and then doubles down on being a jerk as she like a crappy friend, as she like makes Laurie makes fun of Laurie, like, oh, come over here, look, he wants to date you, and it's like, haha, I hate you because you're my friend. It's like, all right, Annie, cool.
Yeah.
Why are you single? You're such a loser. Then Annie goes home, leaving just Laurie walking alone, who gets startled by Mr. Brackett, who is played by Charles Cypher of Carpenter. He was like also in like all the other Carpenter films, like Assault on Precinct 13. I think he also was in The Fog. I think he might have been The Thing as well. I could be wrong, but he was it was in a lot of Carpenter's films. Were the main things I was seeing from him there. And he's Annie's cop father. Yeah, he's
cop father.
Well, he is a cop, and he's her father.
He's my cop father.
I feel like that sentence doesn't sound that crazy. You're making fun of him, but like, he's her cop father. Like, he's a cop who's her father. I don't know.
I mean, that is true. It just seems...
he's also the sheriff, I believe.
He's the sheriff,
yeah.
And who is also Annie's dad.
To be fair, this time I didn't realize he was the sheriff, so I just was like, oh, he's a cop and he's her dad. Moving on. Once home, Laurie sees the shape outside by Mr. Riddle's clothesline. Mr. Riddle's is not actually a character we ever meet. I thought this was Laurie's clothesline, but when she's on the phone later, we find out it isn't. So it's Mr. Riddle's clothesline. But he's gone. Somehow he disappears while she's watching him.
Yeah.
Every other time this happens, like, they look away. This is the one time where it happens, and it's like,
yeah.
All right, maybe
she's on the phone looking at him, and then it cuts to her on the phone, and then it cuts back, her still staring at the spot, and then suddenly he's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wait, so he...
Maybe she hallucinated this one entirely? I don't know.
Nah, he vanished. He has teleportation powers.
Okay, fair enough. Laurie gets a call, and it's Ghostface. Oh, wait. It's just chewing sounds? So Laurie hangs up. Then she gets a call again, and it's Annie, who tells her...
because of course it is.
Yeah. And she tells her that she'll pick her up at 6:30. And she's also mean again, I'm pretty sure, because it's Annie, and it's a scene Annie's in.
Yeah, she makes fun of, Laurie for hanging up because, she was chewing and didn't say anything.
Yeah, for like,
after she asked
30
hello.
seconds.
And she's like, oh, you thought this was an obscene phone call? You're a weirdo.
Basically, yeah. Laurie is picked up by, as I wrote in my notes, the always rude Annie. I'm sure she says something that made me think that. I don't remember what it was in this specific scene when she picks her up in the car, but apparently she probably, I think she literally opens the door and, Laurie's about to get in. She's like, get in! It's like, you just got her! Whatever.
And then she continues to be rude as she talks about,
Well, we're not there yet. We cut away from them before. We have a scene before we come back to them. We head to the graveyard where Loomis is being taken to Judith Meyer's grave by the graveskeeper, who is played by Arthur Mallet,
Yes.
who is also in Hook and Mary Poppins.
Oh.
Yeah. The keeper starts to tell this story about a different town's tragedy before he gets cut off by, realizing that a grave is missing. The gravestone's gone. Like, oh, some kid took this gravestone, but whose gravestone was it? It was Judith Meyer's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we have to have this scene where the gravestone's stolen, because he's come home, or whatever Sam Loomis says exactly.
It does make a lot more sense now that I realize it's just the gravestone that was stolen.
Fair.
Because when they got there, and originally I thought, he took the gravestone and Judith Meyer's body, I was like, that hole is only like
No, it's just the gravestone.
2 feet deep.
Yeah, he literally just takes the gravestone. We then cut to Lori and Annie, who are smoking some weed. Yeah. On their way to babysit. Woo! Michael is driving behind them unnoticed throughout like this whole next scene or so. It's really cool because we see him and they don't. It's fun.
Clearly,
also,
they are not paranoid drivers like me, who watches to make sure that people aren't following me at all times.
And while this conversation they're having, which is mostly just, Lori, you suck for not wanting to have a boyfriend. Oh, you do? You want to date this one guy?
Oh. Oh, boy. You do like boys, after all?
Yeah, and this is all happening as Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult is played on the radio, which, has now become, probably overly used in horror. But at this point was probably one of the first times, because the song had only come out, 2 years before. But yeah, so the song's playing on the radio. They stop and talk to Annie's dad, Sheriff Brackett, who tells them some ropes, knives, and a Halloween mask were stolen from the hardware store. And the girls drive off as Dr. Loomis comes up to try to talk to Brackett, but Brackett's like, I'll talk to you in a little bit. And before we cut away from the scene, though, we do see that Michael drives right behind Loomis, and one of those cool shots. I'm just like, oh, Loomis, you don't see it.
Irony.
Yeah. Oh, Loomis, he's right there, Loomis.
Oh, come on, Loomis.
Yeah. We get a quick scene where Lori tells Annie she has a crush on Ben Tramer. And then Annie continues to suck. That is literally what I wrote, and I stand by it wholeheadedly. Michael is still following them. Annie drops off Lori, and then we watch as Michael watches Annie head to the Wallace house. We then head to the Myers house, where Loomis and Brackett find a dead dog that Loomis thinks
Michael ate.
He either ate him or it's a metaphor. I could see it going either way. Of he says he's hungry, but that could be hungry for the kill. Or he actually ate him. We don't see the dead dog, so I'm not sure. I could see it being interpreted either way. It could
just be that he just killed the dog.
Yeah, he could have just killed the dog, and he's saying, the evil hungers. Or he ate the dog. I'm not sure which. They're both gross. I guess eating a dog, I would say, is grosser.
Yeah. Killing and eating a dog would be grosser, yes.
I agree.
Objectively.
They head upstairs, and after getting spooked by the window breaking, Loomis gives an amazing little speech about how Michael had this pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. It's great.
He is evil.
Yeah, he's pure evil, basically, is what he's saying. It's great. I love Donald Pleasance's Dr. Loomis. He's so good.
Yeah.
He is one of the constants of those early movies of him being there and just always being awesome, even as he gets a little bit crazier as a character. Spoiler, but he is always great. I'll bring it up here. I didn't know if I wanted to bring it up because I only heard about it on one of the documentaries. But apparently, I don't know. I think it was in this scene, but in that opening scene, Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance was just drunk. He didn't want to be there, so he just drank 2 bottles of wine and then still delivered a really good scene with him and Marion. I don't want to speak ill of the dead, so maybe it's not true. But there was at least 2 different people on that documentary who talked about it, so maybe he did it. But yeah. Thankfully, he wasn't driving in that scene, so it's okay. Marion was driving, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, that's even more impressive if somehow he gave this good performance drunk the whole time. But yeah. Before telling Brackett that he thinks Michael will return to the house tonight, and that he'll wait for him, and that Brackett should go do his sheriffly duties kind of stuff, and I'll stay here. We then head to Lori, who is reading to Tommy. Tommy asks about the boogeyman, but Lori goes to answer a phone call before giving him an answer. It's Annie, who just has to open with being a jerk.
There's your legal obligation, yes.
Before the Wallace's dog starts barking like crazy. Annie yells for Lindsay, who is played by Kyle Richards, to do something about the dog, but Lindsay is just watching TV and ignores her.
Yeah, she's watching spooky movies on the television.
She's watching a movie that we'll talk about later once we know officially what it is, but we haven't seen the screen yet, so I'll let it be a surprise.
Yeah.
Then Annie tells Lori she got her a date with Ben Tramer for the dance tomorrow. Ooh. Lori is very unhappy about this. She's like, "Why would you do this? Why would you do this to me? I don't want to. I'm not ready for that kind of basic thing." Which, fair. Tommy looks out the window and sees the shape standing, looking at the Wallace house. Tommy goes to tell Lori he saw the boogeyman, but he's gone when she looks. Annie hangs up on Lori when she gets her clothes dirty with butter, I believe, from the popcorn she was making.
Yeah.
So she changes into a random button-up shirt that's just hanging there. She just strips down and throws on this random button-up shirt that's not hers. As you do. Because you got a little bit of butter on your clothes.
We did also glance over the scene where Michael strangles a dog.
That's after this. That's coming up in a little bit. That's coming up in a couple seconds.
Is the dog still barking this whole time?
He had stopped barking, but then starts barking again, I believe. Before. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I would not skip over that, because that's a dark, but it's scene that happened, and I would have wanted to mention that, that happened. But yeah. So she puts on this clothes. She is now Donald Ducking it.
It's true.
Yeah. Because she got no pants on. Because I guess she got so much butter on her 2 shirts and her pants that she can't wear either of them anymore. I don't know. She then hears Michael break something, but ignores it. Then the dog starts barking again, but Michael kills him.
Yeah.
And I was like, obviously the dog death isn't comical, but Annie's version of it is comical because she's yelling at Lindsay to do something again about it, and then the dog stops barking when it dies, and she's like, "Oh, I guess don't worry about it." Never mind. Yeah, it was some good dark comedy. But yeah, back to Lori and Tommy, who are watching The Thing from Another World, which that's a fun future Easter egg. At the time, it was just, a movie that, John Carpenter liked, but later, the man, made a remake of it called The Thing in the 80s that, so, it ends up being, a cool, foreshadowing moment for his career.
Yeah, that was pretty dope.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing that. It's like, oh, yeah, how about that?
Lori tells Tommy not to worry about the boogeyman because, one, he's not real, but he's still kind of she's like, well, if he's real, he comes out on Halloween, right? Well, I'm not going to let him do anything to you. She's a great babysitter. Lori is awesome.
Yeah, unlike Annie.
Yeah, Annie sucks. And then they go to make a jack-o'-lantern. We cut back to Annie, who goes out to the, separate laundry room building.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I'm sure it's a thing that some houses have, but I've just never seen it, so...
Gotta love 80s house designs. Yeah. Where you're, a laundry room is literally a shed.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And your house.
So she goes out there to wash her clothes, but the door shuts and she can't get it open. It's stuck, so she yells for Lindsay's help, who is still enthralled in the TV. She's a real big fan of The Thing. The Thing from Another World, specifically. Not John Carpenter's The Thing. That does not exist yet.
Right.
We, the audience, keep seeing the shape in the window behind Annie. Really cool. Lindsay answers a phone call from Paul, who's Annie's boyfriend, and goes to find Annie, who is stuck in a window in the laundry room. We come back inside. She helps her out, and they go back inside. And Paul calls again and gets Annie to come pick him up because he wants to, hey, my parents are out,
play
so
harmonica.
let's play harmonica. Woo, yeah. And yeah, Lindsay doesn't want to go to pick up Paul. But Annie's like, all right, fine. What if I take you over to, hang out with Tommy? And she's like, oh, Tommy. I guess she has a little kid crush on Tommy. So Annie drops her off with Lori and at the Doyle house. Annie goes to leave, but she can't because she doesn't have her car keys. So she goes back inside and she gets them, fixes her hair up a little bit. Very important to bring that up, but they felt the need to spend 20 seconds on it. So, yeah. She goes to get in her car, but doesn't need her keys to open the door for some reason. That's a little weird. Also, the windshield's really foggy, so she tries to rub the fog away, and she can't. Doesn't get a chance to because Michael's behind her and he's choking her.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. He kills her. Thanks, Michael. You're a hero.
Thanks, Mike.
But yeah, back to the Doyle house. And Tommy sees the shape carrying Annie's body inside, and he starts screaming that he saw the boogeyman. Lori tells him there is no boogeyman. Tommy says that no one believes me, to which Lindsay responds she does believe him. Which one of my literal favorite moments of acting in this whole movie is Lori's response to this. It's a completely nonverbal, just kind of flustered, what? Okay. It's so, her exasperation is just, it's great, because it's so real. That is how you would react if, some kids, doing that to you. All right, fine, yeah, sure. Be on his side just to be on his side. Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah.
We head to the Myers house, where Loomis scares Lonnie and his friends, just because, Loomis likes to mess with kids, I guess. Lonnie deserves it, so it's fine, but, it's just... It's the first, thing we really see of just this kind of really unhinged Loomis that we'll come to love as we watch the rest of this franchise next year. He just, he's got this, smile on his face after he, scares Lonnie away from the house.
Yeah, the smile is weird, but I feel like his motivation behind this was, making sure that the kids didn't get murdered in the Myers house.
Sure. There's definitely probably an element of that, but I think there was joy. There was joy in scaring the kids that I loved. Yeah. I loved it. I loved seeing the joy in his eyes. It was great. Lost my place, of course, because, it's a podcast. Got to do that at least 7 times.
Scares the kids off and he smiles.
Yeah. Then him and the sheriff.
The sheriff.
Yeah, they talk about Michael for a little bit, and Brackett agrees to keep looking for Michael. He's like, all right, I'll give you one last day. I'll watch him today, but I think you pretty much think you're crazy. But just in case you're right, fine.
Yeah.
A drunk Linda and Bob, played by John Michael Graham, show up at the empty Wallace house. And they start making out while Michael watches them. Back at the Doyle house, Lori...
Classic callback to the beginning of the movie. It's a classic callback to the beginning of the movie. Yeah, for sure, yeah.
But he's in the house this time, so it's,
yeah.
They should see him. But they're way too into making out right now.
Yeah, and he's wearing a black jumpsuit, so...
Yeah, that's true.
He is the knight.
Back at the Doyle house, Lori is sitting down with the kids to watch the movie when she gets a call from Linda. When Linda finds out that Lindsay isn't going to be back, she hangs up and her and Bob head upstairs. Ooh. Upstairs we see Bob and Linda playing harmonica.
Yeah.
During which they take the phone off the hook because they keep getting phone calls and they can't answer it because they're not supposed to be there. And then we also see the Shape's shadow kind of like looking in. Ooh. Yeah. After they finish, Linda sends Bob to get her a beer. Bob says, "I'll be right back," which means mistake. Now let's head downstairs to see what happens next.
Let's see if he will be back.
Oh. Down to the kitchen. The patio door opens, and Bob goes to investigate it. He thinks it's probably, Linda or Annie pranking him or something. But, he closes it, can't really find anyone. But then out from behind him in a doorway pops the Shape. He comes out, runs out, starts choking him, lifts him up, and stabs him to the wall with his knife.
The whole time that happens, we also get to hear, which I don't think we've mentioned yet, the Shape's breathing.
Oh, yeah.
So, we know that, he's about to die.
I realized his breathing before in the scene.
That's the Shape's breath definitely adds, a level of tension
to
the scene, because you're just well, when's it going to happen? Where's it going to come from?
Yeah. He uses his miracle knife to stab him in the wall. It's impossible, but I don't care.
A really strong knife.
Well, it's not even that. It's just the knife is about 6 inches.
And then
we see at least an inch still sticking out. Which means there's 5 inches, and this man he's probably, there's
maybe half an inch in the wall holding him up.
I don't even know if it went all the way through him. It definitely did not go through the wall enough to keep him up in the air, but it doesn't matter. Because it's cool. Because then we also get another awesome shot of Michael, who's doing his little head tilt, looking at it, admiring his work. I believe, I don't know if this was what he specifically told him or what, John Carpenter's vision was for it afterwards, and he was happy that the way it came out. He wanted Michael to be looking at it like he would, you'd appreciate a butterfly collection, was his thought on how Michael was looking at this dead body he has on this wall. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then we go back upstairs where Michael, now hiding under a sheet and Bob's glasses, stands in the doorway as Linda flashes him for our obligatory boob shot, as it was, pointed out in, Scream. So, when he doesn't react or answer her, she gets up to call Lori, but is choked with the phone cord by Michael. Lori, is hearing this, and she's, at first thinking she's being pranked again, because, her friends are horrible people who prank her all the time, so why wouldn't she think that was what's happening here? But, yeah, she does, by the end, start being okay, this seems like it's going too long to be a prank. Something must be wrong. So when Lori hangs up, she goes upstairs and tells the kids to sleep tight. Then we cut back to the Myers house, where Loomis sees the car Michael stole down the road.
Bum, bum.
Bum, bum. Yeah. Then we head to Lori, who is heading to the Wallace house to check on her friends. Lori goes through
She is a good friend.
Yeah, she is. Lori goes through the open back door with no hanging Bob next to her. So, what happened? Where's Bob? When she gets no answer from yelling, when she calls for them, she heads upstairs. She goes to the bedroom and finds Annie laid out in front of Judith Meyer's gravestone. She then starts freaking out and stumbles into Bob's upside down hanging body that falls out. Once again, completely illogical but cool, so who cares?
Yeah.
Before lastly finding Linda in a closet that magically opens. Once again, she needed to be revealed, so who cares about logic? It just happened. Deal with it.
Yeah. This is, our first killer who likes to play with his corpses.
Yeah.
And we love it.
Yeah, we do. She leaves the bedroom, where there's this awesome shot of the Shape in the shadows getting slightly more visible. He's in the doorway behind her. Behind you, Jamie. Look behind you. But she doesn't. And the shape slices her sleeve, giving her a little tiny scratch on her arm. Because this movie chose not to use like any blood, really, for the most part. Which, hey, it works for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It works for this, too. You don't need blood to have a good, scary movie. I still prefer blood. If this movie also had a lot of cool gore, I'd probably like it more, which would be impossible. It sounds impossible to my brain, but I think it would happen. I don't know. But yeah, she slices the sleeve. And then she also falls after she gets sliced.
She falls over the banister.
She falls over the banister to the floor. And when she sees the shape at the top of the stairs, she tries to run out the front door, but it's locked. So she heads to the back door, but Michael blocked it with a rake. Michael punches through the kitchen door. And Laurie is like looking behind her as this is happening. So she decides she realizes she has no choice but to break the glass to move the rake. Right as the shape starting to close in, she runs away yelling for help. Some lady won't let her in, so she runs back to the Doyle house. But she lost her key, so she breaks a pot, like a potted plant, to wake up Tommy to unlock the door. Tommy opens the door just in time before Michael's about to get her. And Laurie snaps into survival mode at this point, and she's not taking any more crap from Tommy, and she's like, "You get upstairs right now," and he does. Laurie tries to call for help, but the phone line's been cut. And she notices the side door is open. So she sits down in front of the couch, arming herself with a knitting needle. The shape pops out behind her, stabs toward her but misses and hits the couch. So she stabs him in the neck with her needle. So he falls down. She takes his knife. She looks over at his lifeless body and slumps onto the couch, dropping the knife. She's like, I killed him. I'm good.
And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, movie ends. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't. Because we cut to Loomis, who was outside telling Brackett he found the car. And we cut back inside, and Laurie goes upstairs and tells Tommy and Lindsay she's killed the boogeyman, as the shape stands behind her. She hides the kids in a random room and then hides herself in a different room in a closet. After she opens the balcony, I guess making him think she went out there, I guess is her idea. I don't know. She ties the door closed and hides in the corner. When he can't open the door by shaking it, the shape just punches his way through the slats and turns on the light. Laurie stabs him in the eye with a wire hanger, letting down Mommy Dearest. Michael drops his knife because, he got stabbed in the eye. So Laurie picks it up and stabs Michael in the chest. He falls down. And, so she's able to sneak her way out, dropping the knife again because, she's learned nothing.
Sadly.
She sends the kids away. She's like, go down the street, go to the Mackenzie's house, and tell them to call the cops. So they leave. She sits in the doorway as Michael does his iconic sit-up and head turn that, the Undertaker stole from him. Outside, the kids run out screaming, and Loomis sees them run out of the Doyle house, so he's like, oh, I gotta go there now. He doesn't say that. I wish he did. I wish he literally said, oh, gotta go there now. That would change the movie. Great.
Certainly change the movie.
Back in the house, there's this really cool over-the-shoulder shot of over Laurie's shoulder as Michael is slowly approaching. Once again, just something this movie does, the suspense over scares is great. So many other movies would have him sit up and there'd be a big thing and then him rush towards her or something. But instead we see it and it's still it's not even in frame. It's not in properly in frame. It's out of focus as he's coming closer to her. It's great.
Yeah.
So he starts to choke her. Right as Loomis is running up the stairs, Laurie escapes by knocking off Michael's mask, revealing his pretty normal face. Who is in this shot played by Tony Moran, I guess they decided that Nick Castle didn't look like what they wanted Michael to look like. So for this one shot, it's not Nick Castle. But yeah. Then Loomis shoots him once, sending him back into the bedroom. Loomis follows him in and shoots him 5 more times for a total of 6 times, which is a line in the next movie, but I love that line from Loomis, so I'll bring it up here.
Fair enough. And then Michael falls out of the window.
Yeah, knocking him out off the balcony. Chris will be doing that. We're going to shoot him 6 times. He's going to fall out of the window. Yep. It's going to be real cool.
I will be shot with 5 times with a revolver, and I'll fall out of the window.
Well, 6 times. It's once to get you into the room, and then 5 more to... You're getting shot 6 times. 6 times! I shot him 6 times! It's an iconic line. You're getting shot all 6 times. No trying to cop out.
When everyone looks over to, see my body, it will still be there.
What?
I will not be alive.
Okay.
I will be shot dead.
Yeah, that's fair. But before we find out what happened to Michael's body, because we don't see it, we see him on the ground, but then we cut to inside where Laurie says, "It was the boogeyman?" To which Loomis replies, "As a matter of fact, it was." Loomis goes to the balcony and sees that Michael is gone. When we go through all like the different rooms, and then outside to the street. It's like we're seeing all these shots of where Michael was. We're hearing Michael's breathing over all this, and we go to the credits, implying that Michael could still be out there somewhere.
He definitely is.
What? What are you talking about?
He is the Shape.
So this movie, before I get into my thoughts, a couple of little bonus facts that are at the end because they kind of make sense because they happened after the movie. Is this movie was initially shot for $320,000, and Irwin Yablans had to distribute it himself because none of the studios would. It's not that they didn't want it because they didn't ever even show up to see what it was. He sent out a bunch of hey, come see this movie so you can distribute it and pick it up, but no one showed up, so he had to distribute it himself. Which he did have some experience doing for, I believe, MGM. He was I don't remember what the term was they used, but he just helped get films into theaters and stuff. So he had experience with it, so he did that. And while the movie went on to make a little bit of money over that $320,000, it made about $70 million. It was just,
small profit margin.
It was just the most profitable indie movie until A Blair Witch Project came out in 1999 and took the crown. But yeah, it just was one of the most successful indie movies of all time. And I can see why this movie is amazing. There's my thoughts. The end. I'll give it a little more than that. This movie is it's shot beautifully. Credit to Cundy, I believe is his name, right? I don't want to credit the wrong person.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. To Dean Cundy, as well as John Carpenter, because John Carpenter, as the director, told him which shots he wanted. But credit to both of them for making it look as beautiful as it did. Huge credit to John Carpenter for this score. Because without the score, this movie would still be good, but it wouldn't be one of the greatest movies of all time. That score elevates this to one of the greatest movies ever. Also, huge credit to Jamie Lee Curtis. There's a reason she became such a big actress. She is also really good in this movie. I don't know, I don't know what to say about Halloween that hasn't been said 1,000 times and probably said with more eloquent words than I'm going to put out there. This movie is art. I love it. I can see why it spawned the slasher genre. Yes, it was not the original slasher. Peeping Tom and Psycho are both kind of given credit as which, because they came out a month apart. I believe Peeping Tom was officially first, and then, but they didn't really start a movement. Then 1974, we had another double hitter of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas, but neither of them really started a movement. You could argue this movie is basically Black Christmas. They took a lot of what Black Christmas did and did a lot of the same things, but they just did it better. I assume. I haven't seen Black Christmas, but this movie transcended. This created a movement and those didn't, so obviously it did something better. Or it was just the right time, right place, I guess, is also a possibility. But this movie is art. It's a near perfect movie, even though yes, obviously all movies have flaws, but like I talked about on Scream, like I'm close to calling this a perfect movie. I initially had written when I reviewed this, like not reviewed, but like rated it on my own personal watching. I like have a little spreadsheet of my personal opinions on movies, and I'd give it a 9 out of 10 on the first watch. But I think this might be a 10 out of 10 with Scream. Like I still personally will put Scream above it for me, for what I want. But this movie is amazing, and it's a near perfect movie. I love it. I love everything about it. Yeah, it's great. That's it. I wish one last thing to close out my thoughts. I wish we were going right into covering the rest of the Halloween franchise, because even though none of them ever hit this levels, I do still really enjoy the peaks and valleys that is the Halloween franchise, and would love to talk about it, but just timing didn't work out, so we're covering it next year. But yeah, I love this movie. It's great. If somehow you haven't seen Halloween, go watch Halloween.
Yeah. Agreed. Very much that if you have not seen this, you need to. Just period. It is available for free right now. If you look up the Halloween stream, there's methods. I can't say because it might not be there if I say it. Or you could support.
Or you could, hear me out, get a free trial to Shudder, and it's there for you, and you get your free 7-day trial. I think you probably need a free 30-day trial if you look for like the right code, and then you can get like 30 days of a bunch of other movies too. But then hey, you're not doing something illegal, so do that. Preferably.
Oh, but, it wasn't illegal. It was just what the person who posted it was illegal.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Because it was, on a very mainstream site that everyone posts videos.
Got it. It's on YouTube apparently right now, but try to watch it somewhere where maybe the money goes to the right people.
That's fair. It's fair. Hey, the first time I watched it, the money went to the right people. I was like, oh man, I'm strapped on cash. Anyways, that's not the point. This movie is fantastic, and you definitely should support it if you haven't seen it before. Just everything this movie does works so well. The score, just oof. I don't know if there's a movie score out there that does quite as much as Halloween does for me. Every time I hear it, I kind of get goosebumps.
When it comes to scores,
it never feels like
John Williams, Star Wars, and this, and like Jaws too. Yeah. But like for the most part, like there are very few.
So iconic.
Yeah.
And it never feels like too much, even though it's played like consistently throughout the film. It always feels like it adds just the right amount of tension. And the sound design, I really enjoyed Michael's breathing. Like it adds a good element of suspense. This is just such a wonderful horror movie, and if you haven't seen it, please do. In my opinion, the best slasher movie, which is I'm sorry, Austin. I do love Scream. It is one of my favorite slashers. Probably right below Halloween. But Halloween takes it for me, for sure.
I completely respect anyone who'd put this slightly above Scream. Just for me, Scream is my favorite movie of all time, period. But I cannot deny the pedigree of this movie, and it is it's a 1A, 1B situation for me, for sure. But, yeah, no, this movie's amazing. I could just say it's amazing for another hour, but I won't. I'll spare you, our listeners. But yeah, this, as we said a couple different times, but just in case we're not covering Halloween 2 next week. I'm sorry. It starts like
next something else.
Halloween. We'll come back to Halloween like next August. So we finish it around October. But yeah, Halloween's great. But yeah, we're gonna continue our kind of one-off kind of series we're doing right now of no franchises till the beginning of the year. With next week, we'll be covering one of Chris's favorite movies. I don't think he even knows we're covering it yet. But it's a movie that Chris told me about, and I haven't seen it. It could be bad. Who knows? It's all on him if it's bad. Next week,
I'm really scared now.
We will be watching Ryan Reynolds in The Voices.
Oh, I love this movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see? Yeah, I
No
knew
doubt.
you loved it. That's why I know about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, we're watching The Voices
I'm
next
excited.
week. But yeah, if you like this podcast, if you could give it a 5-star review, a like, a comment, I don't know, whatever platform you're watching this on, let us know you liked it. It helps us in the algorithm. It helps us emotionally know that you liked it. That's also cool. If you want to help us directly financially, you can head on over to patreon.com/horrorboys. Got a bunch of different tiers over there. You get the podcast early. You could get other stuff that we don't even currently make. We'll make it literally for you if you start paying at those tiers. Like, we got stuff. Go over there. It's cool. Yeah. I've been Austin.
I've been Chris.
And you've been Chris. I say that. It's my part still. Interrupt. I'm Austin, joined by Chris as always, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.